In this video, I'll look at moving, cloning, rotating, and scaling my objects. I have open 36 Jungle Cloning Start. What I'll do is at the end of each video, save that end state, so you'll have a start and an end for each one. The end state of one becomes the start state of the next, or you can keep working with the same file if you'd like. To begin, I'm going to change the colors of my rocks so they're a little more visible against the terrain. As I don't have a material on, I'll just use object colors to sort these out. When I click on an object, its name and properties are available here on the modifier panel. This is Rock01 and it's green. I'll click on the color and change over to more of a rock orange, let's say, and I'll do the same with the other, picking it and changing the color. I'll also press F4 to turn on edged faces, and now I'll start to position these. I'll press W for move, or up on the main toolbar, click on the Select and Move button. We can also access Move by right-clicking, and there's our Quad menu. It's one of the most powerful tools in 3ds Max. What's great about this is it's context sensitive. It understands what you're doing. And so in addition to a lot of the common tools, such as Move, Rotate, and Scale, and hiding and unhiding objects or freezing, we also have things like our polygon menus available on the Tools 1, the sub-objects or parts of this rock, for example, and some simple tools. If I go into things like, let's say, Edge, and I right-click again, I have tools here, Tools 2, that are specific to dealing with edges and modeling objects. So the Quad menu is very smart. There's also alternate quads available. Holding Control and right-clicking, holding Alt and right-clicking, holding Control-Alt and right-clicking, and even Alt-Shift and right-click. Lots of different things, and what these are fantastic for is really custom configuring your workspace and getting the most out of your tools by keeping them close at hand. I'll right-click and pick Top Level, press W for Move, and move this rock. As you can see here, there are axes available from the pivot point or the center of the rock. Z is up, and here's X and Y in red and green. If I click on one arrow, the rock moves in one direction. If I click on the bracket between the arrows, it's constrained to two directions. Clicking in the middle of the Move tool rides in all three. It's really up to you how you'd like to move. I'll take this first rock and pull it over and submerge it in the hill a bit. Then I'll press R for Scale. Again, clicking in the middle of the Scale tool scales this down. I'll pull the scale down, move it over, making sure I don't select the terrain. One good way to get around this is to pick the rock and press Spacebar for Selection Lock. That way we can't let go of it. I'll take this rock and pull it over and press E to rotate. I'll spin this rock and position it, submerged partially in the hill. Then I'll do the same with the other one, pressing Spacebar to release the selection lock and pulling this rock over. Pressing R for Scale and scaling it down, moving it into that hill and pulling it down here. It's okay to have these objects submerged in, as the ground can ride around them, we'll say. I'll rotate this rock and start to flesh out my landscape a little bit. To clone these, for example the big one, I'll select it and hold Shift while I drag. This will clone the big rock, asking me how I'd like to rename it. I'll clone it as a copy, which means if I change one, the other won't change. An instance then means if I change one, both change, and I'll explore this. For example, if I clone it as a copy, those two rocks are the same. Picking a vertex or a polygon and pulling it does nothing to the other rock. Picking this rock and shift cloning as an instance, though, means if I change one, the other goes with it. For example, if I pull on the side of the rock, it affects both of them. A reference then is a modified instance. It's an instance below and a reference above the reference line. For now, we'll just use copies, as we like to have these be fairly unique. I'll rotate my second rock around and then start in on the plants. I'll scale this down and submerge it, bounding the terrain with some rock formations. Now for my plants. The first thing to do is to pick the plants and pull them in. Then pull them up to make sure they're not submerged in the ground, and press Z to zoom extents. I'll take my plants, pull them down, and move them, starting to populate this jungle nicely with these plants. Here's our first big, well, we'll call it a lily, and I'll make sure that this is not submerged in, rotating if I need on, let's say, the x-axis to align it to the terrain. We can see it's a little bit under, so I have a little flexibility. It's okay to even work through objects like this. I'll position the rest of my lilies in a minute, but I'll start in on the other small plants. Here's one sticking out of the ground. I'll pull it over, pull it up, make sure it's not in the ground, and rotate and clone. The idea here is I'd like to take what looks like 3 or 4 plants of each and spread them around to make my jungle scene, and then populate the flowers. I'll keep doing this, cloning, rotating, scaling, and making sure I use the A, B, and C variants of each to populate my jungle.